guys, in today's build video I'm gonna share with you my current AR build, which can both tank and also deal a lot of damage because of its high damage to armor stat. And so this build uses Firewall specialization, mainly because it's the best specialization right now and the most versatile to use in the dark zone and in conflict or any PvP scenarios. So I'm using my Firewall specialization because of the striker shield, which buffs my damage whenever there's an enemy in front of my shield, and I can also share that damage buff to any teammate standing behind me or within the range of my shield's cone or buff range. Okay, so another thing is it allows me to regenerate and mitigate damage whenever I pop my armor kit or whenever I use my armor kit. Okay, so for this build I'm using the FAMAS 2010, so it's fitted with C79 scope for that 5% crit chance, laser pointer for that 5% crit chance, muzzle brake 5.56 for another 5% crit chance, and the sturdy extended 5.56 mag for that plus 20 rounds. So when you use an AR, you aim for assault rifle damage, health damage, and damage to target out of cover. So damage to target out of cover is a multiplicative bonus damage which allows you to deal more. So why damage to target out of cover? So compared with crit damage, it's also important to have crit damage also, but crit damage is reliant on your crit chance, so it's not always being procced, or you're not always getting that critical hit damage. But damage to target out of cover is always procced, or it's always activated. So whenever you shoot your enemies, you always have this bonus damage. So that's why it's important to always target that your weapon has this multiplicative bonus damage attribute. So for this talent, I'm using InSync, wherein whenever I shoot an enemy I get plus 15% skill damage for 5 seconds, and whenever I use my skill I get plus 15% weapon damage for 5 seconds. Okay, so whenever I pop my shield I get that plus 15% weapon damage, and then when I shoot my enemies I get that plus 15% skill damage, and when I get those two bonus damage proc I get double the amount for both. So I use InSync to get 30% additional weapon damage. Okay, so for my secondary, I also use the FAMAS 2010 with the same mods and same core attribute and attributes. But for the talent, I'm using Optimus. So Optimus allows me to get plus 3% increased weapon damage for every 10% of my ammo that is missing from my magazine. Okay, so I use Optimus whenever I have no shield. Okay, so if I cannot proc my InSync, for example my decoy is on cooldown, my shield is broken or in cooldown, I rely with my Optimus. Since Optimus is close with InSync, the only difference is that InSync allows you to quickly get that plus 30% extra damage. For Optimus, it stacks up for every 10% of your ammo missing, so you get 3% during the first 10% of your ammo that is being expended on your magazine, and then you stack it up until you get the full plus 30% ammo. So it's just a talent use for secondary. And also you use Optimus for weapons having more than 800 RPM. So quick firing guns can make use of Optimus. Lower than that RPM, you go with strained or other weapon talents. Okay, so I'm using also the FAMAS 2010 as my primary and secondary because of that high RPM. So whenever you have high RPM, you have high DPS, meaning you can easily stack up damage. That's why I'm using this gun. Not only is it the meta AR hit now, but I'm also using it because of its high DPS. Okay, so for the pistol, I'm just using the first wave PF45. So it has pistol damage the target out of cover, and strained, wherein it allows me to get plus 10% critical hit damage for every 0.5 seconds I'm firing this gun. So I get a total of plus 50% crit damage if I have the full stacks of this talent. So I'm just using this pistol just for shooting NPCs, and sometimes whenever I need to shoot something and then I don't want to waste any ammo, or during PvE whenever I'm in a pinch. Okay, so it has pistol mag for that plus 11 rounds, and coupled ko small laser pointer for that plus 10% crit chance. So let's go with the gears. So for the first gear that I'm using, I am using the Walker Harris mask. So I equip this mask to get the first bonus, which is plus 5% weapon damage. So I recalibrated it to armor for survivability, and the reason I recalibrated it to armor is so that I can at least tank and mitigate damage for my teammates, while at the same time I can deal a lot of damage. Okay, so it's also important to remember that when you want to create a hybrid tank DPS, you should get crit damage and crit chance on your gears. Okay, so crit damage is also multiplicative bonus damage, but it's dependent on your crit chance. So you need to have high crit chance so that you can easily proc, or you get a higher rate of getting critical hit damage or dealing critical hit damage to your enemies. Okay, so I also fitted this mask with crit damage, and it has crit chance and crit damage attributes. For the second piece, I am using the Grupo Sombra backpack for that plus 15% critical hit damage bonus. It has weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage, and another mod for crit damage. For the talent, I just went with Vigilance. Okay, so why Vigilance instead of Adrenaline Rush? Okay, so you can use Adrenaline Rush to gain bonus armor, but if you want to deal higher burst damage, you should use Vigilance. Okay, so you can also use Adrenaline Rush, but for me, I prefer using Vigilance, since what I try to do with this build is to stack up weapon damage. Okay, so you get the first Walker Harris gear, you get plus 5% weapon damage, and then I have my AR weapon damage together with my Fenris Chestpiece weapon damage. And if I have Vigilance, I can increase my weapon damage by 25% as long as I'm not getting damage. Okay, so because getting damage disables this for 4 seconds. Okay, so that's why I'm using Vigilance, so that I can easily deal 25% more damage whenever I try to go behind or attack from behind my enemies, or whenever they do not have any clear shot on my agent. Okay, so that's why you should be able to or practice positioning so that you can get more out of this talent if you're using it. But if you prefer going toe-to-toe with your enemies, you can switch with Vigilance. So for the third piece, I'm using the Fenris Chestpiece for that plus 10% assault rifle damage. Again, I'm trying to build as much assault rifle damage or weapon damage for this build, even though it's tanky. I'm trying to get a total damage, which is almost close to your 1.3 AR build, but it has more survivability compared to your 1.3 million armor AR build. Okay, so again, I recalibrated it to armor, and it has crit chance, crit damage, and another mod for crit damage. For the talent, I just went with Unbreakable for survivability or extra survivability, since it allows me to get 50% of my armor back whenever it's depleted. Okay, so that's in PvP, but in PvE it gives me 95% armor back whenever it's depleted. Okay, for the gloves, I'm just using the best in slot gloves, the contractor's gloves. So for the bonus damage, it's disregarded since I'm not using LMG. And again, I recalibrated it to armor for survivability. And the reason I am using this, or the reason why it's the best in slot right now, is since it has that plus 8% damage to armor, which is also a multiplicative bonus damage. So it's also good since it's not also reliant with your crit chance. Damage to armor is the same with damage to target out of cover, which is always activated or always procced. Okay, so I just have another attribute for crit damage. For my holster, I'm just using another Walker Harris holster so that I get the second bonus of plus 5% damage to armor, which is also another damage multiplier or multiplicative bonus damage, so that I get a lot of damage to armor together with high damage to target out of cover. So it has weapon damage, crit chance, and crit damage. For the last piece, I'm using the Fox's Sprayer knee pads. For this knee pads, I'm not using it for that rifle damage. I'm using it for the extra 8% damage to target out of cover, and I fitted it with armor and crit damage. For the skills, I'm just using the Striker Shield so that I can get more damage whenever there's enemy in front of my shield. So it allows me to get 12% damage bonus per enemy in front of the shield, and I can share it to my teammates who's standing behind me as long as they're within the buff angle. Okay, and then I use my secondary skill, which is the decoy, so that I can easily reposition myself whenever we're pushing or I'm pushing. And also I use this during times where I'm being flanked or ambushed by enemies, so that I can easily misdirect them and reposition myself into a safe location where I can easily shoot them. Okay, so for the stats, for the FAMAS, I have 81k weapon damage, 32k PvP weapon damage, 49% crit chance. Okay, so 49 crit chance. Before, I'm always at 55 and above, 55 to 60 or 59% crit chance. Right now I'm at 49%. So 49% is not really good if you're reliant on your crit damage, but since I have high damage to target out of cover together with that 13% armor damage, the crit damage on this build, which is around 168%, is just a secondary bonus or secondary source of damage. But since I have an RPM of 900 or a fast firing gun, I can quickly get that crit damage even if it's not within the 50% to 60% range. Okay, so this build is not really reliant on your crit damage. Crit damage is just another damage buff you get, but your weapon damage and all the bonuses are already applied without even dealing critical damage. So that's why it's able to deal more damage even though it's not a DPS build and it's a bit tanky. Okay, so for the secondary, it has the same stats. For the pistol, I have 132k weapon damage, 44k PvP weapon damage, 44% crit chance, 168% crit damage, 120% headshot damage, since pistol has high headshot damage in its stats, and 13% armor damage. For the specialization, so you can't use this in the dark zone, but you can use this in conflict whenever you get that supply drop or the ammo drop. And it has high weapon damage. It can almost one-shot opponents, and even high armor opponents can be easily dealt with this specialization ammo. So the stats are not really important, but it has 435k weapon damage, 144k PvP weapon damage, 34% crit chance, 168% crit damage, 85% headshot damage, and 13% damage to armor. So this is my current AR build, which I run in the dark zone. Hope this build helps you guys in playing the Division.